Hi, this is Film Obsessive. I'm Jay Rohr, and we're here with Rick Bakewell and Anthony Michael Hall to talk about their new film, Roswell Delirium. Welcome.
Thanks. Nice to see you, Jay.
Thanks for having us.
Uh, so, I guess to start off with, what is this? What is this film? What is it about?
Well, the film is a kind of a throwback sci-fi drama thriller. It's very much a nostalgic journey that kind of goes into a very heartfelt film about like trauma and depression and mental illness. It kind of takes a spin on, as I tell people, it's like Close Encounters meets Terms of Endearment. So it's like very there's sci-fi pieces, and then we kind of go into a very second and third act where it's very just kind of roller coaster, heartbreaking, more or less.
Right. And how did Mr. Hall? How did you become involved with this project?
Well, I met Rick on the project a couple of years back, and we shot the film about 3 years ago, right, Rick? So
Yep,
three?
3 years ago. Yep.
Yeah, and at that point, Rick had done a lot of the pre-production himself. You know, he's already made a bunch of films, and he's an established, cinematographer. So I was really impressed with the script. You know, I was really interested in the work that he had written, and I thought it was very strong, very character-driven. But I also liked that there's a lot of surprises, a lot of turns in it, the things that keep kind of drawing you in. And I think like a lot of modern audiences, Jay, like you want things, you don't want it all served up. You want the audience should do some work. You should figure things out. And I think this is a really interesting project that underscored that. Because you're seeing these flashbacks, and then you're starting to connect it. It's kind of built in its own world and timeline. But ultimately, I think what it evolves into is this really compelling story between a mother and a daughter. So my character is Jerry Baskin, who's a therapist, and he's kind of leading a group therapy session and working with Mayday as an adult, the Ashton's character, to try to get her back to herself in some way, to kind of help her kind of center herself and figure out what she's been through. Because what we're presented in the film is we're not sure if she's had these experiences with the aliens, or she's misremembering it, or is it in her mother's head. So I think what the film really develops into is a really interesting study between the mother and the daughter, and she's really trying to come to grips with who her mother is, and the lessons that her mother's imparted to her. So it's very powerful. But what's interesting about Rick's script is that he uses humor and a lot of different lighter things to kind of draw you into the story, which I thought was really interesting and compelling too. So it was great.
Writing a script like this, which has twists and turns, and as was so aptly said, you're trusting the audience. Like, when do you know to like let go to that extent? Like, what is the gauge where you sit there and you're like, I'm going to assume my audience is going to be smart enough to get this?
Well, people really love to be spoon-fed these days. They don't want to think, and I like films where it makes you think, and you're constantly like guessing, like what really, where are we going? What's happening? And not too much. Like, you don't want to like really overdo it with, like some films overdo it and it's like, oh, it's another dream sequence for the 10th time. You don't want to overdo that. You want to still have your audience engaged. And for me, like I just, kept imagining that everyone was along for the ride. And then I think by the time we get into the last group session, that's when they're really fully figuring out the script and the story, and they know where it's going now, because there are things that detour you along the way, but there are Reese Pieces, a little trail to lead you and guide you if you really pay attention. Like it's a movie you can laugh with at some points, but then you also have to kind of follow the roadmap and kind of stay on course, because there are signs along the way kind of tell you what's really happening. So
Right.
that's something that people really just kind of need to pay attention to. But a lot of people, I'm sure they kind of get distracted, whatever. But like all the signs are there to lead you to where the film's going.
I just wanted to add to that too. What's interesting too is that it's about this young woman kind of reclaiming herself, in the subterfuge of what she's experienced as a child and as the daughter of this woman who's struggling. And so what's interesting is that Rick gave it real life circumstances in terms of the fallout, the nuclear fallout, and what actually happened to her. But the whole aspect of the aliens is kind of nebulous. You're not really sure if it's real or not until, as Rick said, we get later in the story and you realize when she's in therapy that she's really trying to reclaim herself, and she's trying to find those lost parts of herself that she might have seen through her mother's eyes, so to speak. So it's a really interesting, compelling drama. And Rick was very sensitive about too. There's a final scene where they meet up, and it's I don't want to give away too much, but it's very powerful. And Rick was really in tune to that from a director standpoint because he really wanted to give them space. So when they really did finally meet, the emotion was there, and I thought that was an excellent choice of Rick's as a filmmaker to kind of give both actors space and to kind of build up toward the ultimate climax, which doesn't have aliens or shootouts or anything else. It's really about a mother and a daughter coming to terms with each other. Yeah.
It is really grounded in some solid themes and some powerful concepts, for lack of a better term. But I write better than I speak, so excuse me for a moment. But what it comes down to is like there was some heavy material throughout this film, and I was wondering, since there's so much of a young cast for when we're in Mayday's past, um, how do you get children to that point where they're like kind of getting a perception of like the material? You know what I mean? Like, how do you get kids ready for like scenes of abuse and that kind of thing, or like the horrors of the alternate history they're inhabiting?
Well, I mean, to give credit to all of those actors like Caden, Roman, Georgia, Connor, Kylie, all of them, they were pros. They really were solid, and I knew that they could handle the material because we did a table read together, and they understood everything. And then when everybody remembers the Challenger is a very big part of the 80s. And I talked to them about it beforehand and they knew what happened. And I said, well, that's fine. You know what happened, but I want you to watch this 20-minute short film about Christy McCullough before we even shoot the scene first. I want you to know who this person was, because you'll be more invested when you really watch it in the classroom. And they really connected to it. And I remember Kaden really was crying during one of the takes because it really impacted her. And it's like, they're still teenagers, but like they really just absorbed the material and they understood it, and it didn't really like affect them in a negative way, but all those things really helped them be better actors, on set. And I'm very proud of their work, and just like for them to understand the material and then to just like be able to like to be in the scene and then walk away with not having any issues afterwards. They can just kind of let it go and put it to the side. Because some
Right.
actors can't get out of that kind of stuff. They kind of get trapped in those feelings and emotions. But those kids are just, I'm laughing. The next scene, they're out laughing, having a good time again. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, Jay, like what Rick is saying to underscore that. I mean, it's interesting. I think acting is, I've had a long time to think about this. I've been an actor for almost 50 years, but it's almost a misnomer for what it is. You want to be as real and as alive and present as possible. And I think with these kids, they were just so impressive because, as Rick said, they were able to jump from beat to beat. They understood the funny parts. They understood the more compelling, heavier stuff. And it was really a great thing to watch them work and to see their joy at work. That was a big lesson for all the so-called adults on set. Not only they were prepared, but there was a great sense of community. They really supported each other, and they would play and hang out and have fun, just being kids in between takes. So it was great to see them on set, and obviously all their parents were there, really supportive. A lot of great moms and dads too that were there supporting them. So it was just a fun process overall. And again, there's a real arc in the story for both Kylie and Ashton, both playing the same characters. But it's a credit to Rick because he really guided all the actors through all of that. So we had the lighter bits, and then as the film develops, it settles into really what it is. It's a human drama between a mother and a daughter. So we're really proud of everybody's work. Yeah.
Nick, you have a fantastic background in cinematography, and it really shows throughout this film. I mean, like some of the scenes, like you can really tell like different settings just by the lighting and the way that they're colored. And there are some really beautiful shots, like especially there's the diner scene with Dee Wallace, where she has like her grandson, and they're off on their own situation. I don't want to say too much because this movie does have twists and turns and mystery, and if you give it away, you ruin a lot of the surprises. But that's just a beautiful shot of her just sitting in the booth. How much of that do you know going in? Like, this is how I want it to look, and then the complexity of bringing that all to life.
Well, I had a great DP, Carter Ross, who helped me out with the film, and we scouted those locations at the diner, with D. And I remember like He's like, where do you want them to sit? And I said, right here. And I want to shine a light right through that window, and I want them to have that orange cast on their face. And he's like, you want to go for it? I said, absolutely. And we kind of had like a theme for the 80s where it was very colorful and very orange, and then as we kind of get into the later world with Anthony and Ashton, things are a little more on the blue side. They're a little more cold, so we kind of see the decay of color throughout the whole film. So we're kind of going back and forth, and that's something that I thought about. And then Carter just kind of put together a lookbook, and then we just made sure that we kind of like we shot with like references like E.T. and kind of matching those kind of colors, and then towards the end going way off scale with that like just kind of muting all the colors and taking out saturation and just really just kind of showing just how things can really just I guess evolve in a very decaying way with this how space, and it kind of makes you feel when you see like cold images, it makes you feel a little uneasy. So it's like we kind of built that from the beginning, and it's like I'm very proud of the work he did and everyone else. I mean, this some of the shots we have and the dollies and the aerial stuff is just I think some of the best stuff I've seen for a while. So.
Well, looks like that's about it for my time. So, unless there's anything you'd like to add about what you got going on in the future, I'll
Anthony?
leave it to you, gentlemen.
Oh no, listen, I appreciate your time as well, Jay. Thanks for taking the time to talk about the film. What's up for me in the future? Oh, a bunch of stuff. I joined the cast of Reacher this year, so that went well. The show was a real big hit, and that was a lot of fun. And then I went and shot Wednesday for Tim Burton, so that'll be coming out this summer, late this summer, actually in August. And then I just wrapped production on another film. It's called Halloween Store, which I shot in Hawaii. That was produced by Kenan Thompson from SNL and his partner, this guy Johnny Ryan Jr. So, yeah, lots of good stuff moving forward. But this is a film we're really proud of, and I'm really proud of. Rick and I have become good friends throughout the process of making this film, and so we're endeavoring to do more stuff together, which would be great. But we're proud of the film. It's a very interesting and powerful film, in indie, and we're really proud of it. And it took a lot of effort. It's always the collective. We had a really great crew, a lot of guys that had worked with Rick before that showed you know, their allegiance and really showed up for us and really delivered because we shot all around the LA area and it was it was run and gun like a typical indie production. We shot the movie in about 3 weeks with multiple locations and you know, there was a lot to achieve, and we got it done. So we're proud of it, man. So thank you for supporting the film.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah.